Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the OK Grognard Show. It is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, 9:38 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here in the birthplace of D&D, where we're all very excited. See if I get some of this camera stuff figured out yet. What's going on with, yeah, it's still kind of crappy. Maybe because of I don't know. I got to work on this. I need to spend some time away from the show doing some of that stuff. Anywho, just to take a look back here, Game Running Tips is now going to be the Thursday thing. And that can sometimes incorporate terrain and painting of minis and that sort of thing, so it's more of an expansion than a change of the category. In essence, I thought about my crafting skills and my ability to paint, and I looked at some of the stuff I'd been recording since the last time, because there was this thought, well, if I do it live, what's the what? Is anybody going to be watching this stuff? And then when I looked back at it, I was like, what a waste of... I mean, sure, I can talk about some interesting things while I'm doing it, but is that the point? To include something that isn't that and then have the show be about that? Doesn't make sense, right? It's like... saying, I don't know, you know what always annoys me? And I go to a baseball game with somebody, or a movie with somebody, and that's the intent, is to go see this movie, or to go see this baseball game, and then, when you get there, the other involved people seemingly want nothing to do with the movie or the baseball game. They will talk about, they will do just about anything else to the point of distraction, despite the fact that that was the main goal of the... So when I look back on some of these Thursday terrain crafting and painting things that I did, and even when I took time away from the stream to just do some stuff and then try to edit it and cut it down and stuff, well, two problems there. One, no amount of editing can make a lack of skill come off like skill. So what's the point of showing something that isn't skillful in the first place? I'm a student of this stuff. I'm not a teacher of this stuff, is what it boils down to. But the other thing with the all the editing and everything. Good morning, Growlite. How you doing, buddy? All the editing and everything is exactly why I've trimmed the show back to be what it is, and to just be able to do a quick live stream and then throw it up on YouTube unedited, and boom, it's done. And I'm not spending a whole day working on a show that is meant to be just a light, quick, fun, little time-consuming... right? Supposed to take up like an hour of my day, or less even sometimes a little more, and just be about gaming in a sort of a light conversational way. So when I thought about making some adjustments to the schedule, dropping the crafting and that sort of thing, which was putting me in a position where I was either going to have to get a lot better very quickly, or I was going to have to use a bunch of editing tricks to make whatever I produced interesting, to make it worthy of putting on the internet for people to consume. And it just wasn't happening. It just was not happening. So I had to look at it and be realistic about it, and decided, you know what? If occasionally I make something that I want to show off on the show, I can do that under the guise of game running tips, because they're a physical thing that you use during a game. So there's always the option. It keeps it under this umbrella, but it expands the subject matter for content for Thursday so that I can look at a bunch of other things. Different from campaign discussion on Wednesday, because why? Because why? That was a question I had, and I thought I'd answered it in my own mind. But now I'm thinking back to what I thought about, and I'm wondering if I did. Different from campaign discussion because it is specific to what you present to a specific group of players. There we go. It's specific to what you present to a specific group of players over a specific period of time. I don't like to think of campaigns as long stories because they're not until they're done. You're not presenting a story, you're presenting a setting for people to explore, and the stories come out of that. However, game running tips can be more about the mechanics of just dealing with any old game, more of a general topic, whether it's about running games or gathering players, locations you're playing at, interactions you're having that are not related to the campaign proper, and the setting and the material. So, lots of different subjects. Hopefully, it'll distinguish itself over time as being a separate collection of topics from Wednesday that wouldn't quite fit in Wednesday and vice versa. Anyway, Thursday is now game running tips. I made a few other adjustments too. Let me see if I can change over something here. We'll take a quick look at the revised schedule. Here we go. And Monday is still weekly news and announcements now, rather than I wanted to make sure that it was slightly adjusted there. Cartography and world building still on Tuesday. Campaign discussion, parenthetical Grimwald. I don't want people to get confused and think that it's only about Grimwald. Good morning, Red Bard Games. How you doing, buddy? Then Thursday, game running tips. Friday, building adventures. I've taken the specific focus of virtual tabletop and set it aside. Sometimes it'll be that, sometimes it won't. It'll just be building adventures in general. Of course, Saturday, for a few weeks now, has already been DM reviews and not just cartoon reviews, so we know that. And Sunday is still the rules retrospective. So I think we got a pretty good adjusted lineup here. Anybody has any other ideas? I'm always willing to entertain them. I'm still focusing on first edition Dungeons and Dragons as the system of choice. I think because it's the one I've run the longest and the most, it is the best system for me to look at by default. Sometimes, as with this little offering up here, up here is a 3.0 product, 3.5 actually, that came out with some years ago. But you'll see how that works into a game running tips idea in regard to making magic items special. Keeping magic items special is the topic for today. So, when we think about magic items, LuxFire22, welcome. When we think about magic items, we think about power, right? I mean, ultimately, isn't that what players like about them? That it gives them some sort of power or skill or ability that until the time that they get that, had not been an option for them, or it makes them better at something that they maybe already do. Superstitions was a way of creating a set of items that would all have some sort of odd, strange onus regarding them. And I also did something different. I themed it based on creatures. So everything has something to do with animals in here. The owls on the cover, I always thought was pretty neat. It's a compelling cover, isn't it? Don't you think, chat? Is it scary? Does it make you think these guys are watching me? That's what I like. The open game license on this one's just wild because there's so much stuff thrown in there. But here's a look at the table of contents, which gives us the breakdown, the animals that were being involved in this. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. We've got 48 different animals involved in these superstitions. I think it's mostly 2 per page. There are a number of full page illustrations and a few items that take up full pages, and there can be multiple items for some animals, but that's pretty rare. We had some contributions from these individuals here. Okay, I remember what I did here. Some of this is Juegos Secretos. Obviously, that's games creatives. So I forgot. I was screwing around a little bit with that one. That was fun. I'm going to pop off this bookmark section and make this a little bigger. Let me read you what I wrote here. The subject of superstitions includes far more than could be held in a single book. It is the intent of this book to focus on beliefs of an odd or unusual nature that present particular opportunities for RPGing. To avoid repetition, few references are mentioned where simply seeing some creature in a mundane moment can be an omen. Black cat crossing your path, right? Frankly, research has made plain that for some folks, absolutely anything can spell victory or doom. So what makes this product different and useful to you? Aside from the flavorful superstitions, some based on real-world imaginings and others conjured up whole cloth, the opportunity has been taken to present many advanced or templated creatures, unusual magic items, and interesting spells. While the backdrop of superstition is used as a premise to introduce and integrate these new modified game components, one can certainly pick and choose which components suit your game, then plug and play. If, however, the GM chooses to stay mainly within the parameters of this volume, but doesn't wish to introduce too many of the additional mechanical elements presented herein, the superstitions detailed on the following pages can be used as pure flavor. Your NPCs can claim to believe in the various superstitions, even if you decide there is not a good or ill in-game effect associated with them. One of the advantages for your campaign in using the various animal superstitions is getting to increase the number of appearances of fauna without making the game seem too mundane. How many times has a GM described an overland trek in mechanical game terms and not mentioned a single plant or animal? Too often, campaign games don't allow opportunities for plain, non-threatening or non-predatory animals to make an appearance. By having a number of superstitions built up around them, it's much easier to spotlight them in the game. You'll find that the quotes and excerpts in the shaded boxes can serve as a number of purposes. You can use them to find immediate inspiration of your own or to inspire your players. Alternately, You can use them in-game and attribute them to a favorite NPC as a way to add some interesting depth. If you have the time, I urge you to follow up on these tidbits and explore how a lead or subject can expand your own knowledge base and broaden the scope of your campaign as a whole. I have found that the more well-rounded a GM becomes, the greater the fun he can instill in the game at the game table. So there you go. Nice little introduction there. It's all about making the game better for GMs and players. So Albatross, we know the story of the Albatross, right? If it's following a ship and you kill it, then the ship is doomed. It just goes back to the long voyage. It's the Rime of the Ancient Mariner? Am I conflating two things? I think it is. Anyway, the long-winded... oh, yeah, of course it is. It's right there in front of me. So I do a little quote from that. And the thing is, there's this item called a feather token, Albatross. We know about tokens, these kind of things that really originate with first edition, right? The mechanics for these, you'll see, are in third edition terms, but for the most part, they're easy to translate. You can ignore things like CL, craft level, is it? I'm pretty sure. And then the spells it would take to craft it and the cost, strong conjuration. Those are all mechanical terms that apply to concocting this item in a third edition game from scratch. So good stuff to know if you're running that type of game. Certainly if you're running a Pathfinder game, a lot of this stuff would still apply because a lot of this stuff carried over from third 3.5 in particular to Pathfinder, and maybe still to Pathfinder 2, although I'm guessing a lot of the stuff was simplified out of PF2. We'll see. Anyway, the feather token Albatross, a command word, turns this token into an albatross that flies in front of a ship toward the nearest habitable landmass. If a ship is becalmed, the albatross will circle and not disappear until habitable land is within sight from the ship. So, helps you spot land. It won't provide wind or guide you there, or, well, it was guide you there. It specifically does guide you there. It's going toward a landmass. It will keep you in sight so you can follow it to the nearest landmass. What is there is, who knows, right? So under ants, I've got a couple of colony circlets and Cuirass of Ant Power, a +2 breastplate, pretty cool. Badgers, I created a dire badger. Gives us a nice tough animal with badger poem. When midnight comes, a host of dogs and men go out and track the badger to his den, and put a sack within the hole and lie till the old grunting badger passes by. Well, there you go, Wisconsin. There's a badger story. Bats! There's an echolocation spell that you can cast. There's a potion of bat's blood. Ingesting this thick red liquid grants the imbiber the ability to use echolocation out to 60 feet as per the spell. So the spell itself lets you sense other objects in total darkness. It does a 60-foot thing, so it's similar to other limits on vision that certain items and spells can create. So, it's balanced in that regard. The silence spell negates echolocation. There you go. Important. Bears. We love bears. Everybody loves bears, right? There's a bear totem. The simple wooden figurine, not only meant as a symbol of reverence, it also holds substantial power of protection with regard to the creatures. Whenever a bear of any type or kind is present, one simply has to hold this bear totem aloft. Bears cannot see, hear, or smell the warded creature. So pretty neat. You're not using it to control, right? Even extraordinary and supernatural sensory capabilities gained by template spells crossbreeding, such as the blind sense, blind sight, echolocation, scent, and tremor sense, cannot detect or locate the warded creature. For as long as the bear totem is held aloft, bears simply act as though the warded creature is not there. Excuse me. If a warded creature touches or attacks the bear or bears, even with a spell, the protection ends. The warded subject can move normally, cast spells that do not require both hands, and attack others, provided at least one hand is left free to hold the bear totem aloft. I like the idea that it actually has to be, held up in the air. I think that, gives you a role-playing thing that you can actually physically use at the table. You can say, okay, here, this 30-sided die, this is the bear totem. Hold it aloft, and for as long as the player keeps it up in the air, let it go. If he brings it down to do some other things, well, then that character got distracted, right? It's kind of a first edition, early old school way of bringing the physicality of the real world into the game, just slightly, it's more for comic effect, because at some point they're going to forget, probably, right? I love that picture. That bear, just tough. Ring of Hibernation, this is cool. The wearer of the Band of Iron can induce in himself a state of hibernation as per the Hibernate spell. Did we add? Yep, Hibernate spell was a new spell that was created for this particular thing. It lets you induce a state of hibernation for 1 to 12 weeks, chosen at the time of casting. Each week the subject intends to hibernate. He must spend an equal number in days eating approximately 3 times the normal amount of food and drink. 2 days, for example, of this hyper eating allows the subject to hibernate for 2 weeks. Being disturbed from the cycle for very brief periods does not negate the ability to continue to hibernate, provided the subject does no more than utter a few short sentences and reinduces the state within 1 minute without moving from his general location. So there you go. The material component of bear hide. So, you've got a blanket or a hide you wrap around you. You can actually look like a bear while you're there sleeping. So this is a neat little spell, and then not just a spell, but we introduce a ring that allows you to use that spell, right? So even if you're not a spellcaster, now there's this ring that can be worn that can induce the hibernation. And what does this do for you? Good question. Well, if you're trapped on an island, you hyper-eat for a couple of days, you can hibernate for 2 weeks. Do the same for 12 days. Hibernate for 12 weeks. If you're short on supplies, it will actually allow you to extend your stay. And, of course, this does not negate the healing processes and gaining of hit points back. So if you want to just hibernate away and just continue to recover from some severe injuries, that's one way of doing it, right? Bees. Oh, we love bees. Candle of Daylight, so we made a little waxy thing there. 60-foot radius. So it's a daylight spell, so it's a little more, can be used 3 times to evoke a daylight spell, which was a 60-foot radius with light, like daylight, so it's a bright light, and lasts for an hour each time. Pretty neat. Pot of Propolis. A dab of sticky resin from this container can be spread over a fresh wood. No, that should be wound to aid in the healing. It staunches immediate blood flow and ends the continued loss of hit points below zero. For those below zero, it cures a single hit point of damage on any creature. So it's a simple one dab, slap it on, stops bleeding. So swords of wounding, sharpness, whatever that produce continued bleeding effects will stop that. It only does one hit point. It's basically a anybody can use it. Stop someone from bleeding out if they've gone below zero, with the added ability to close severe wounds that are continuous bleeding wounds. Beetle Scarab, we got a brooch, pretty good. Birds, preening feathers. Songbird token. We got a lot of tokens in here, and I like tokens. Or totems, rather. Tokens and totems. Similar things. Tusks of Goblinoid slaying. Long Spear of Boar's Bane. Okay, so that's in the name of beers, but against them. Blood Bond. The Golden Calf. So many superstitions and fairy tales were looked up, and a lot of these are inspired by tales of legend, fairy tales, superstitions, old mysteries. Book of the Butterfly. Butterflies in the stomach. Here's an interesting one. If the subject fails a will save, they become shaken for 1 round per caster level. It's almost like a minor fear thing, right? Creatures with 6 or more hit dice are immune to this effect. It's just a little tiny little spell just to throw someone off their game. I think if they're shaken, they're getting -1 to hit or damage. I don't know. It's been a while since I played 3rd edition. Don't quote me on that rule. Here's a cat's eye. Anyone who considers the protocol unimportant has there you go. Robert Heinlein once famously said, anyone who considers protocol unimportant has never dealt with a cat. Funny stuff. Locate familiar's owner. That's an interesting one, right? Celestial Cat. Celestial was a template used in 3rd edition. And chickens, rooster, blasted dawn, dire, fighting cock, okay. Blessed cricket cage, ring of the cricket, crow collar, fiendish raven. So we got a ton of these, right? There are so many that let's go back to here, that we've got tons. I mean, we were just maybe a quarter of the way in there, and just all sorts of wonderful little ideas. Anyway, this is a few bucks over on Drive-Thru RPG under Creative Mountain Games if you're looking for it or if you're interested. I think you'll also find that we're running out of time, so I should wrap this up. Anywho, let's just say, I think game running tips on keeping magic items special. All right, let me just say this in the overall. If you're making up your own magic items and tying them to some real world or some in-game lore or consequence, that's what keeps them special. You want to do that as often as you can, even with things as simple as a +1 sword. You don't want stuff to just be you don't want a golf bag full of you don't want somebody to just have a golf bag full of magic swords and think that they're all just interchangeable clubs, right? Anyway, that's my take on it. I want to thank everybody. I do want to say also, don't forget, this weekend, starting tomorrow, all time, anytime this weekend, 24th to 27th, Gary Gygax Day weekend. Run a game. Have some fun. Get in a game. The new schedule, we talked about it earlier. Game running tips on Thursday, as we did today. Building adventures Friday. DM reviews on Saturday. Rules retrospective on Sunday. Weekly news and announcements on Monday. Cartography and world building on Tuesday. Campaign discussion on Wednesday. Thank you if you're following the channel. If you do, please do chime in during the stream, because that gets you on a little list that lets you get in on a potential giveaway. I want to thank everybody who does chime in, and even those who follow that don't chime in. If you can't or won't, no biggie. If you're following on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up, maybe a little attaboy in the comments, or whatever you want to put in there. We appreciate any feedback we can get. Thank you very much again, and everybody have a great day. Bye-bye.